Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. Monday Night Football. There are a few better things in the world than Monday Night Football, especially when it's at home and especially when Mike Tomlin is coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers, because he has never lost at home on Monday Night Football. And the Steelers looked probably better than I've seen them in a very, very long time just last night. A big win, David. Where does this put our team right now? That's my question. How different do we have an outlook on this Pittsburgh Steelers football team?
I think our outlook goes back to what we said last week. We know what's down the stretch these next three games. They're all tough, even Cleveland. It's at Cleveland. This game, we said, turned out to be, and who knows if it'll actually turn out to be this, but this game we thought might be the most important one left because it is like kind of the last one besides the Browns that's like you should win. And then, you've got one of the tough NFC competitor, and then your rival that you're playing to win the division against. So I think that this, what was it? Mike Tomlin had to go 3-2 in the last 5 games. We're 2-0. He is putting in the work now so that we don't really have to later. And I think that one more win, I think it seals us a playoff victory. Or not a victory, but home field advantage in a division win.
I think that's true. And I was looking up and down the standings last night. I was trying to figure out all the configurations as to how the Steelers could get into the playoffs with the absolute bare minimum, which I think we would both agree is winning one more game. If we win one more game, then I think that gets us in. Now, I was actually a little bit interested in the fact that this game against the Lions coming up, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I almost feel like this upcoming week's game is sort of irrelevant because I think with the way the tiebreakers work, the thing that you really need most is another conference win and another divisional win. So if you want to win one more game, you pick it's either between the Browns or the Ravens because this is an NFC matchup coming up. So really it has no bearings on the tiebreakers outside of the fact that, it's your actual record if you do lose a game. So it's interesting, kind of understanding the fact that they beat the Dolphins last night, which is a conference win, which is huge. And that gives us, I think, 2 games up on the Ravens in the conference standings, which is massive because the Ravens play the Patriots and then they play us. And then they also play the Green Bay Packers in there, which as far as the same thing you could say with us, it's fairly irrelevant for them, although it's much more relevant because, they're chasing the Steelers at this point. So it's an interesting spot where the Steelers are, but I applaud them for coming out ready to play last night because I had this idea that it could have been a very ugly game and it could have gone awry very quickly. But early on, they set the tone by stopping the run. And after that, it kind of was like the old rusty car trying to get the offense moving a little bit. But once it got moving, it really didn't stop until that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that was so surprising because, basically the whole first half, our offense didn't really do too much, and it was pretty quiet, just like their offense was. Their run game was, we were doing a solid job with it based off how their run game had been, but there were, seams and things that we were just making just those plays that were, stopping A-Chain from hitting the seams. And then McDaniel, for some reason, he abandoned the run a little bit, but I don't even want to put it all on him because the Dolphins just didn't really possess the ball at all. They just, from the second quarter on, I was like, have they had the ball, at all? Because it just didn't seem like they did, which was mind-blowing because that's something I've harped on a lot this entire season, that we can't possess the ball, we can't run the football, and, we did that to a T. We owned time of possession, and, once our offense got going, it was in a groove. We got in a system and we figured it out and just broke the Dolphins' defense will, especially in the second half. And that was, I think, pretty encouraging to see. And, I agree. Defensively, it was a great performance. Granted, you weren't really playing a quarterback because Tua under 30-degree weather is, I think, now 0-7.
I think it's 0-6.
0-6. And, he just did not play well, but our defense also, was solid.
I would say absolutely, and sure, the interception to Asante Samuel was a terribly thrown football. My dad texted me. I think it was the first and only thing he texted me during the game was that was one of the worst throws I've ever seen. Which it was pretty bad, and that's one of those things where you're glad that our defensive back actually could catch the football because they were in the plus side of the field, and that really was a big swing, especially with our offense not doing a whole lot early on. And kind of going back to our offense, once it did start getting going, we scored 4 straight drives. And it was the first time since 2018 that the Steelers have done so. So we're talking, 7, nearly 8 years since we've scored 4 straight touchdown drives. And they were all exceptionally methodical. And if you look at Aaron Rodgers' stats, he was 23 for 27, 224 yards, so not even 10 yards per pass. For 2 touchdowns, he did take 3 sacks. 2 of them were early in the game, and I was like, okay, let's get rid of the football there. I thought they were bad sacks. And then the one that he took later on was just to keep the clock running, which was a nice play. But I thought that once we started to get in the rhythm of, slowly churning the wheels of the offense, it was probably the most effective our offense has looked, arguably at any point this year, because sure, we're not throwing it very deep, and very occasionally we would. We had that one long one to DK right over the middle. It was a perfect throw right into a nice window. But other than that, it was a lot of dink and dunk, but it was effective. And if you score on 4 straight drives, touchdowns specifically, Chris Boswell didn't have to do anything in this game. Like, that is how you win big games. You can't be settling for field goals. You can't be sputtering out. But if you have the same type of methodical drives that Aaron Rodgers was making in the end of the second half or end of the second quarter, and then pretty much the entirety of the third quarter, this team could be very successful, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And there was like a pivotal moment beginning of the third quarter. We had the ball, and it just reminded me of this talking about the deep ball. And I mean, this is just, you love having Aaron Rodgers because it's third down, and he just chucks it deep to Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and you're kind of like, what the heck? Okay, like we have to punt it, momentum gone, but you see Aaron Rodgers is just getting at the refs, and like he's wanting 12 men downfield, and they needed video assist to prove that it was 12 men downfield, and that play was huge. Like if we punt that ball away, it's kind of back to square one, and we don't have those 4 consecutive drives, and we don't keep piling on that momentum and let Rodgers get into a groove. And I think that was huge. And both of his touchdowns were really good. Specifically, shout out to DK Metcalf. One, that play blew my mind because I thought it was picked off. Like, for the life of me, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I saw the jump and I was like, oh, he picked it off. And then I was like, wait a minute, he didn't. DK's running, and then he throws Minkah Fitzpatrick out of the screen and then just takes it in for the touchdown. Like, that was just a vintage, tough Steeler play. And like that was just the cherry on top where it was like, bam, like that was awesome.
Yeah, that was one of the plays that you circle on the 2025-26 calendar, and you say that was one of the iconic plays. And I was in the same boat. My jaw was on the floor when I saw that because you're right. I mean, he chucked the dude. It was pretty impressive. And the fact that he kind of bowled over another guy to even just get in the end zone after that was really impressive. And part of that is me wanting to see that more from DK Metcalf. Get him the ball in space over the middle of the field and let him be this big body that he is and let him just go to town. I feel like early on this season, we started to do that a little bit. We had that long 85-yard touchdown throw to him when we played against the Vikings in Ireland. It's like, okay, let's get him the ball in space. Let's see what he can do. And then it's almost like we just didn't do that at all, like in the entire middle of the season. Yes, we chucked a couple deep balls against the Ravens to him, but this is so different. This is getting him the ball in his own defense, getting him in space, and letting him just bully people. And I think we need to see more of that, especially if he's going to be paid the pretty penny that he is over the next couple of years.
Well, I completely agree. And I think that like first half, even Troy Aikman mentioned it, like we just were not throwing him the ball. And that was very frustrating. And just knowing in like the second half, I feel like we didn't even. I think he ended up with like 5 catches, 3. Okay, 3. So we still didn't even really get him the ball that much. And it's like there's the talent right there. He ran past like 4 Miami defenders in the middle of the field to get into the end zone, like a 15-yard after he chucked Minkah out of the way. Like, he doesn't need to just stay on the outside. He can outrun anybody. And so I think that seeing that, hopefully we use that more. We're going to need to use it and use the middle of the field, which we struggle to do. Pat Freiermuth also used the middle of the field really well. Aaron Rodgers and him had a nice groove going, especially towards the end of the game. And I wanted to say, something I've said the whole year is that we haven't really seen Aaron Rodgers make those throws where it's like that's an Aaron Rodgers throw, and that throw to DK Metcalf was like, you know, blew my mind. And that's like I haven't seen him do that for a while, and I love watching his highlights. And I think that one can go right in there with his other throws. It's like what, like how did he get that there? So I feel like he's heating up, starting to feel the playoffs, wanting to get to the playoffs, wanting to end on a good note. And I don't know. I think that I think he played really well against the Ravens. Played solid football, and he played great tonight. So or last night. So I think that he might be starting to like heat up even more as the end of the year goes on.
I think even his post-game press conference is evident of that. I wrote down a quote that he had when he was getting interviewed. He said, "If we can take care of business, we can get a home game right here in this building." And then he said, "This is why I wanted to come back, to be part of something special. This is cold weather, Aaron Rodgers. This is like, okay, the playoffs are right around the corner. Sure, we had this big lull in the middle of the season, but now it's like he can taste that. It's almost like his senses are tingling a little bit, and he knows that the playoffs are right around the corner." And that's something in itself that is enough to really motivate somebody. And I think, like you said, we've seen that the last 2 weeks, especially with the way he played against Baltimore and with the way that he played last night against the Dolphins. He's been very efficient. He has not been having many passes batted down or incomplete. He's been hitting his throws. And a big reason for that, I think, has been the offensive line and the protection that he's gotten the last 2 days. The Ravens didn't sack him a single time. He did get sacked 3 times this week, which, like I said, a couple of them were early on, and I think he just held on to the ball too long. And then one late in the game was just to stay in bounds and not stop the clock. I think we need to talk about Dylan Cook, the new left tackle that came in for Broderick Jones. He did not surrender a single pressure against Bradley Chubb, who is a $100 million rusher. If that tells me everything that I need to know about this guy, and he's very inexperienced. The broadcast was talking about that a lot, that he just simply hasn't even played that much football, which is astounding that he's coming in against a guy who's making a whole lot of money doing this stuff, and he didn't even give up a single pressure. And even sometimes you see him, he's working around the pocket, and he's giving Aaron Rodgers a clean pocket even when Bradley Chubb has some speed on him. He didn't budge this entire game, and I was very keen on watching that for the entirety of the game. That's a very encouraging thing to me, because if Broderick Jones was taking steps forward, and now it doesn't seem like he'll be back anytime soon. If this Dylan Cook guy can come in and do what he's doing, again, protecting Aaron Rodgers is almost the most important thing, I think, with this offense. And if he's doing that on the left side, then that's massive.
I completely agree. I was blown away by his performance. And yeah, the announcers talked about it a lot, but like I saw that stat of like he was going to be in and Pete was out, who was backing up Roger Jones already. And I was like, oh gosh, that is not good. And I mean, he was lights out, and he was one-on-one so many times against Chubb, like you mentioned. Like, just it was insane. It was a great performance. And I think the O-line as a whole, the first couple sacks, Aaron Rodgers held onto the ball a little bit, but also pressure got there quicker than you'd like. But other than that, and then the run game, I think, starting a little slow. Other than that, I think the O-line played great. And I think it's very encouraging, this game for the O-line. And a question I want to pose to you that I think is interesting, I was kind of looking at it and seeing like how well we played at home. Like, right, night game at home, and it's like, man, like we dominated the Dolphins. They got garbage points, and maybe tried to make it somewhat close, but we dominated them. And thinking about how things might shape out playoff wise, it's either a home playoff game, division win, or no playoffs for us. And we haven't had a home playoff game since 2020. We haven't had a home playoff game with a crowd since 2017. And it looks like if things pan out how it looks like they're going to, we would pull, I believe, the Chargers and maybe the Bills, but I think it's the Chargers right now. The Chargers are also not a cold weather team. I don't know how Justin Herbert has played. He's played in 30-degree weather, 40-degree weather. I don't know how he's played with wind chill. By that time in Pittsburgh, we're talking teens, 20s, wind chill maybe below that. I don't know how these guys are going to play against them. And like that got me excited. Like, I know we said that this is not a team that's going to win a playoff game, but thinking about that matchup alone of getting this home playoff game, it got me excited of like, oh, like in that game, I think we have a chance. I don't know what your thoughts are.
That is interesting, because I kind of look at the Chargers definitely in a different echelon than the Steelers. I think the Steelers, you take out. You don't take out at all. You take the last 2 weeks, the win against the Ravens and the win against the Dolphins. I still don't see a team that is on the same caliber as even a depleted Chargers team, a Bills team that's kind of a shell of themselves. And heck, I mean, you look at the Texans and their defense and what they've done for the last 5 weeks. It's a stingy defense, and you see them in the playoffs, you might be in for a world of hurt. So, do I still think that the Steelers are a step below those teams? Yes, but to your point, I think that there is some validity to that. I think if you get the Chargers, who are still just very banged up and they're playing super ugly right now, I think that if you can draw them at Heinz Field for a home playoff game, you have a chance to be competitive, which I don't know if our standards have shifted. I think we talked about this last year around this time is like, what do we even want? Do we want a win? Do we want a loss? What do we want when it comes to the playoffs? I think right now, my watered down standards are I just want to look good in a playoff game. I don't even necessarily want to win because I don't think this team can win one, but I just want to act like we belong there. Does that kind of track with you too?
I absolutely agree because, like, yeah, in one mind, it's like if we win, it's like okay, well, Tomlin's got validity again, and all our momentum with him is lost. But if we win, it's like, oh my gosh, like finally, we're not just I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just you talk about a team that's just like all smoke and mirrors, or I don't know what the phrase I'm looking for, but we've been that team since 2020 of like, oh, we get there and then we get crushed and we get embarrassed. And like that's what we are now to the NFL. And it's like, yeah, I don't want that again, especially at home. I mean, that would just be embarrassing if we pull the Bills and they run two plays against us and absolutely kill us. So, yeah, I agree. I at least want a competitive game. I want a game where I'm at least like excited thinking, will we win? Instead of just like, okay, like when's the shoe gonna drop? And yeah, I still don't know. Like I think these next 3 weeks are gonna show us a lot. Um, because we play a lot of different types of teams. And so I think they'll really kind of help us know a little bit more what to expect if there will be a playoffs and if, what those will look like. So, yeah, I agree. We're not on that caliber, but home field advantage definitely does give us a little bit of help. And hopefully we get some really, really bad weather because we'll be better prepared for that weather than the Texans will or the Chargers will. The Bills, they'd be ready for it. So I definitely, if we pull the Bills, all hope lost. But if we can pull one of the other two teams, I don't even, okay, yeah, it's hard because it's like you still straight up on a piece of paper, you're picking any other team over us. But who knows?
You don't know, and again, that's why you play the game. Games aren't played on paper, which is the beauty of the NFL. Now, I want to kind of shift to another topic because it's very relevant to what we're talking about in terms of the playoffs. And we need to talk about what's going on with TJ Watt right now because up until last night, the Steelers were 1-10 in games without TJ Watt. And it was one of those where it's like, well, if he's not on the field, then we can't win. And last night, we saw that the depth really stepped up. Nick Herbig had a really nice game. Alex Highsmith had a nice game. And the defense at the middle level, I thought, had a really nice game, too, as far as the run stopping goes. Patrick Queen had a couple of tackles for loss. We had, I believe, 4 sacks in the game. Jalen Ramsey had one of those safety sacks. Cam Hayward had one. Peyton Wilson. And then Odomewo, just kind of late in the game, just out of nowhere, the backups to the backups. We got these random guys that are getting sacks. And, against the Dolphins team that have really been humming the last several weeks, I think that's encouraging. But the fact of the matter is, even a diminished TJ Watt is still TJ Watt. What do you make of this entire situation of, like, the dry needles, his lung collapsed, he went to the hospital? Like, we don't even really have a timetable for him as of this moment. So where does that put you in a mindset for the rest of this season?
Yeah, it has me worried, I think, for sure, because sure, we beat the Dolphins without him, but again, it's a team that can't win in the cold. Like that is their statistic. You know what I mean? So like again, almost like to last week saying he's not impressive, even though he won pretty big and it feels a little impressive. Like it isn't extremely impressive because this team has not found a way to win in cold weather. But I am worried because one, it's unfortunate. I saw something else that it was kind of blaming our staff, with all of this stuff, and it's like that's just. I mean, you never want to see that, and that's another thing that's a little embarrassing. Like it reminds me of when I forget what team he was on. Maybe it was the Giants when Tyrod Taylor. It was a similar thing where they messed up and like ended his season. I think maybe, and it's just like, and that team was garbage. And it's just like you see that, and it's like, how can you let someone be on your staff and do that? And especially to T.J. Watt, like we're talking about one of the best defensive players in the league, like what the highest paid end right now, and like we're just gonna that's what we're gonna do with him is like let that happen to him. It's very frustrating to me that and obviously mistakes happen and like I get it, you're never gonna be perfect, but it's like, I mean, come on. Like when it's your guy that you're 1-10 without before last night, how you do yeah, so I'll stop harping on that. But I am worried, especially when we start playing tougher caliber teams like the Lions, going back to the Ravens, like that beginning of the game against the Ravens, he was so important in shutting them down a little bit. So I don't really know what his timetable is. I would think his timetable is going to be longer than we would like. So I'm definitely worried overall. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think you're right in that it's going to worry me because when the news initially dropped, it's not even about football anymore. It's like this dude has a collapsed lung. That's like life threatening to some extent. He was hospitalized overnight. Like that becomes something bigger than football. That's somebody's life in the balance, and that kind of gave a little bit of a different perspective. That some of these other injuries, sure, if you tear your ACL, that's terrible, that's awful, but this is a little bit different. This is somebody's livelihood. And I think that part of that is I can't expect the timetable to be shortened in any way for that very reason, because again, this is somebody's life. This doesn't have anything to do with football. You don't want to chuck him back out on a football field if he's not 110% cleared to be back on the football field, maybe even something closer to 120%. This isn't one of those things that you trifle with and mess around with. This is a whole lot bigger than just football. So, from my perspective, it's like, yes, I want him on the field, but bigger than that, I don't want him to come back any earlier than he should, nor should he have to. And it was funny, my boss is a Steelers fan, and the first thing he said to me after he heard the news, just out of the blue, he says, that trainer or whoever that was that was operating on TJ Watt, he's getting fired immediately and he's getting a lawsuit. There's no coming back from that. He is in deep water, and his medical career is probably over at this point, because it's like the World Cup. You figure it's like these are the most expensive legs in the world. You have to take care of them if you're a stadium operator. You can't have any blade of grass that's out of line, because these are the most expensive legs in the world. This is TJ Watt. As of right now, he's the most expensive edge rusher in the world. So he's whoever it was, he's done for.
Yeah, and it's yeah. Again, like there's a great comparison to like the World Cup, like what you're talking about, but it's horrible that yeah, like what you said, it's a collapsed lung, which is life and death, and so it's scary, and it's scary to think like man, like it's not like this trainer I don't know messed with his hamstring or something, like it's his lung, like that, like it's just it's a different note. It's a different note than if it were something else. And like I completely agree that I'd rather make his timetable longer. And it's like, look, if he's got to be out the rest of the year, fine. Like I like, yeah. Again, it goes past football. It goes past. I just hope you're okay. And yeah, it was unfortunate I remember when the news first dropped because they were very vague at first, and I was really hoping that it was nothing serious because yeah, I was worried immediately, and hearing the news, definitely still worried, and hoping that everything works out. But yeah, I think that um, I would be totally fine with them being more on the cautious side than trying to push him in there just for his health alone. And I also think, looking back towards the game and looking at what we did this week, I don't think we're hopeless without him. And I think that, it could be a little extra momentum that you're playing for this guy, a guy who we know would kill to be on the field right now. And that's all he wants to do. So yeah, I don't know how this plays into the mentality of the players on the defense. But hopefully this whole situation can kind of come to a good end.
I think one of Mike Tomlin's quotes that he's been reiterating the last several weeks is one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity. And I think as far as this last game goes against the Dolphins, that was absolutely true. I mean, again, we're talking about Dylan Cook locking up Bradley Chubb. Jalen Warren was a late add to the injury list. Over the weekend, Kenneth Gainwell got a lot of the touches this game. He had a heck of a game. 13 carries, 80 yards, also had 7 receptions to lead the team for 46 yards. Had a couple of really big explosive plays. I can think of that one big chunk run, right out of the gate in the second half. And you figure again, Nick Herbig had a really nice job in relief. And I think it speaks to the fact that Omar Khan has really been flooding this organization with a whole lot of depth, which in recent years, it's like, okay, if TJ Watt's out, we can't do anything. But now it's like, okay, we have some depth in places. We have options in places. I mean, again, Asante Samuel comes in this week, at corner and he gets an interception. So I think the Steelers kind of embodied that quote from Tomlin this week is, it's now a lot of people's opportunity to step up. And from now on, it's the same thing because you have a very specific goal and it's a very attainable goal. You just have to find a way to get there with what you have. And again, everybody's hurt this time of year, but you have to do with the hand that you're given sometimes. Sometimes it's a crappy hand, but hey, you can still bluff and win a hand. That's just kind of how the cards work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point about our depth being better than it has been in years. And that is definitely thanks to Omar Khan. And I think that even I feel like these past few cornerback signings of Patrick Peterson and then Darius Slay, it's kind of like, what are we doing? But the Asante Samuel Jr. one, I think is a great addition. And it was so funny because when he got that pick, I was like, man, I remember Asante Samuel Jr. I'm like, what did he, was he a rookie last year? Like, what happened to him? And I looked him up and I'm like, oh my gosh, he was the Chargers cornerback who had 3 picks against the Jaguars in the playoffs. I was like, I liked him. I remember watching him and liking him. And then, injuries, really hurt him. And now he's on our team. And I think he's a good cornerback. And I think that he can fill in well kind of in that, third cornerback role. And so I think that's a great addition. And I think our depth is really starting to show itself, in a lot of different areas, like you mentioned. And that's very exciting to see because I think in the past, like you mentioned, it's like, all right, yeah, if we don't got this guy, we're done. And it's very encouraging to see that we have built a team that, has depth.
Yeah. And I think, too, we're going to get a little bit of help this coming week against a very good Lions rushing attack. Mike Tomlin did say that Derek Harmon was capable of playing against the Dolphins, but they decided to hold him out anyway. And again, I think that's a smart thing. Maybe before the game, it's like, okay, they got Achane who's running wild over there. It was the best rushing offense in the NFL over the last 4 games the Dolphins had. And you get one of your guys in there who's, exceptional at stopping the run, and you don't play him. That's a bit of a questionable move. But again, the guys that were in there, they really stepped up and they stopped Achane. They didn't really run for much of anything. And they were averaging 192 yards a game in their last 4 games, which is unbelievable. We held them to 63. So the fact that you get Harmon back this week against a rushing attack that includes David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, as well as a very impressive passing attack. I mean, this is a top 5 offense in the Lions that is exceptionally scary coming into this game, and they lead the NFL in points per game. They're over 30 points a game this season, and with the defense, I feel like trending in the right direction. This is a great test this coming week against a very good Lions team that I think their record doesn't exactly tell the entire story of the type of team that they are.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that even though we had a great win this week, it didn't make me much more hopeful. One, because I think that what we were able to do, and I think what Mike Tomlin wants to do, I think Mike Tomlin had his ideal offense this week, right? Of just that possessing the ball, keeping your defense on the field. Our defense had fresh legs the entire game, which is extremely rare. We never get that. And so I think that it worked against the Dolphins. I don't think the Lions are going to let that happen. I think that our offense is going to have a harder time. And I think that our defense is going to have a harder time too, just because, man, it'll be a real test for our secondary. And not only that, there's no real weak spot on the Lions offense. They've got a double-headed running back room, both of them being great in their own ways. Jahmyr Gibbs being insane. I mean, he's just ridiculous. You have Amon St. Brown, who's just week in, week out doing great. Jameson Williams. It's just hard to kind of see where you're going to. Yeah, I mean, they've gotten 30 points a game, and it's like, yeah, I don't know how you're going to stop them from not getting 30 points. So I think that I agree. They're not as bad as their record looks. And, in Detroit, this is going to be a tough one.
I was looking at tickets to this game a couple weeks ago. They were over $400. I think they're down to 270 over at Ford Field in Detroit. I'm in striking distance to be able to go to the game. However, that price tag is very quickly deterring me from even sniffing the Detroit air.
Yeah, no, that's high, and it'll be. I'm interested to see how many Steelers fans go because I think that over the past few years, the Lions have just been one of those fan bases. Like I mean, they finally just come alive. They finally have a team to root for, and when you talk about home field environments over the past few years, I think that Detroit has had a crazy one. And so I'll be interested to see how much black and gold is there because we travel well. And I think that'll be definitely a little bit of a factor going into the game because I think I'm definitely factoring in to the fact that it's at home for Detroit. They get to play in their dome and have their fans and their crowd after a tough loss. They're looking to bounce back, and I think they will.
An interesting little trend that they've got going on right now. In the last 9 weeks, they have alternated win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, all the way down to this week. And they lost to the Los Angeles Rams in a massive shootout this last week. So if trends continue, then we're on the hook for a loss this week as Steelers fans. So, I'm a big numbers guy. I like looking at trends. This is something that you can't help but notice. So, and part of that too is you have to understand that sure, the Steelers are leading the NFC or the AFC North right now. The Lions aren't even in the NFC playoff picture. They have everything to play for this week and for the rest of the weeks down the stretch. I mean, they've got the Bears to finish out the season. I forget who their middle game is in between now and then, but I mean, this Steelers game, this is almost make or break for the Lions, which again, it gives me some heart palpitations as to what they're going to do and what Dan Campbell is going to have his guys prepared to do.
Right. And that's just, you don't want to be the team going into their home when they have to win. Like it's a must win. Like, yeah, I am definitely worried. I think that going back to our earliest record prediction, all the way back in the summer, I don't think I've ever predicted this game as a win or thought we were going to win, and it's going to stay that way. I just think that this Lions team is too good. I think that um we've proven time and time again that hey, we can beat the 6-7, 7-7 teams that are just like us. But then when we play those teams that are the top caliber, we're losing, and we're going to lose by double digits. And so I think that like you said, I like the numbers. That's a crazy number from the Lions. I think that our number is that we can't beat the top tier teams, and I think both are going to ring true on Sunday.
I mean, if you look at the records just as they currently are, both the Steelers and the Lions are 8-6. But it doesn't take much more than the eye test to realize that the Lions are a different type of 8-6 than the Steelers are. Now, I will say that their defense is not exceptional. They have given up some points this season. They're bottom 10 in points against, as well as bottom 10 in their passing defense. So I'll pose this. If Aaron Rodgers can operate the offense and Arthur Smith can call the offense in a similar way that they just did against the Miami Dolphins, do you see this being at least a competitive shootout like we saw with the Lions and the Rams this last week? Is that possible?
If our offense can do what it did against Miami to start, I think we can't have a first half like we did. If we can start with four straight, scoring drives, then yes, I could see it being competitive, one score game. But I don't think oh man, I don't think we can keep up with this Detroit team. We can't get down to more than 7 at any point in this game, in my opinion. And so if we can start how we played kind of in the middle of this Miami game, I think we can have a chance to get down to a one score game. When you get down to a one score game, anything can happen.
Yeah, I think so. And the biggest thing I think that really concerns me is the comparison that you can make with Dan Campbell's Lions and Ben Johnson's Bears. We saw the Steelers have a lot of trouble against the gadget plays that Ben Johnson had with the Bears. I mean, Dan Campbell's, right off of that same branch too. He loves those gadget plays on offense. And he's also one of those guys that he doesn't care how big of a lead he has. He's going to absolutely bury you. I mean, I think we saw at the end of the Steelers game last night, they went up 28-3 and then, they kind of let up a little bit and the score was a lot closer than the game truly was. Now, you never thought for a second that they were in any danger of losing the game, but at the same time, Dan Campbell's Lions would never allow a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter to whoever the other opposing team is. So I want to make that distinction, and that is one of my primary concerns this week is just the type of team that the Lions are. They're cutthroat. They're not going to give you anything, and they're going to be weird. And I don't think Mike Tomlin's defense is like weird very much.
No, definitely not. And I think that you're right. I think that I just don't know if we're going to be fully ready for it. And it is technically a short week, and we know that we are not good at those. So I think that I'll say we lose. I'll say that it's close for maybe a little. But I think we're going to lose 31-21. I think the Lions are going to hit 30 points, or maybe 31-23. I don't know. Something in that where it's like, it's not 7 points. It's a little bit more than 7 points. And I don't think we get blown out, but I don't see us getting past this team.
I'm in a similar boat. I'm almost exactly with you. My final score prediction was going to be 34-21. So, just about a 2-touchdown margin. I think that our offense is going to be passable, but not nearly enough to actually win the game. And I'm in the mindset that if they are competitive, then it would give me a little bit more hope for a potential playoff game. Like I said earlier in the episode, I don't think this week really matters a whole lot as far as the actual shakeup of the playoff picture goes. Even if the Steelers lose and the Ravens end up beating, I think it's the Patriots this week they play. So, even if that happens, I would still, my opinion really on their playoff standing wouldn't really change at all. Because again, I think at that point, it's just, okay, we got to find a way to beat the Browns and or the Ravens at that point. So this is, I was thinking about this yesterday. This is honestly like the least, what's the word? This is the least meaningful Week 16 game that Mike Tomlin has ever played. Because you think of the entirety of his tenure, every Week 16 game is very important because he's either fighting for that 8-8 or 9-7 or 10-7 or whatever. He's either fighting for that or he's in an actual playoff race. This game it doesn't really have a whole lot of meaning, at least on the surface level for me.
Right. And I think that it's so interesting because, I think both the Steelers and Ravens are going to walk away with a loss after this week. And even if the Ravens didn't, and the Ravens won out before us, and we lost the next 2 games before then, we beat them and we still win the division. So it's exactly like we've said. Like, these next 2 games, like, yeah, I want to win them, but they don't really matter. Like, we've lined it up. Tomlin's lined it up so that all we got to do is win Week 18, and we were in the playoffs.
And I feel like it's going to come down to that, like either way, because again, I'm still of the opinion that the NFL has some type of script to it, and that's as terrible as it would be for a couple of 8-8 teams to walk into Heinz Field in Week 18. The NFL loves their Ravens Steelers, and that's just one of those types of games that they might even finish off the season with. Maybe they make it like that Saturday night game or something like that, but that the NFL can't pass up on Ravens Steelers for a chance to go to the playoffs.
No, they will be salivating. It will be the first thing to get flexed to a night game, and they'll be eating it up.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of losses predicted here, and as far as this week goes, we are going to have an outside perspective episode with my favorite Detroit sports fan, and we will reveal that when that time comes. That episode will be recorded tomorrow, which will be today by the time you're listening to this episode. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. We will be releasing that in the later portions of this week. And as always, Boardman Black and Gold is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. David, any final things on the Steelers this week?
Man, I think once again, we'll see. This team every week has continued to surprise us. It is the team that no one can predict, and we'll see. We'll see what they got in store for us this week. But either way, I'll be sitting there probably surprised. Either way, what happens?
Yep. Again, that's just how the Steelers operate. Now, before we go, I want to pose a couple of things because I was in Pittsburgh this last weekend for some very historic happenings. And I just have to talk about it for at least a couple of seconds because I know that David also appreciates this too. I had 2 tickets this weekend that were just about rinkside to the 2 Penguins games against the San Jose Sharks and the Utah Mammoth. And I saw the 21st 4-goal blown lead in the third period in NHL history. The 100 years of existence of the NHL, it was the 21st time that a team blew a 4-goal lead in the third period. And then I came back the very next day because I'm a sucker for pain, and I saw a 3-goal blown lead in the third period, back-to-back days with horrendous losses for our Pittsburgh Penguins. And that one, while not nearly as bad as the 21st all-time, it's still the 210th in the 100-year history of the NHL. If you want to have some numbers on this, the probability that the Penguins would have won both of those games was well over 99%. And they lost both of them. And I was there for both of them, David. I can't fathom how it could have gotten any worse for the Penguins this last week. It might have been the worst 7-day stretch for the Penguins I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I was keeping up with both those games. I was watching the end of the last game, the 3-0 blown lead. I mean, it was just so horrible. In both those games, I texted you. Like, I was like, I can't believe this. I had no idea you were at either game. And both times you just responded with you at the game. And especially the second time, I was like, oh, Zane, oh no. I was like, I felt so bad because I was sitting, watching us, especially that last overtime that lasted like, what, 20 seconds? I was like, oh man, I can't imagine. Like yeah. I mean, it was horrible week for the Penguins, and who knows? Hopefully, I mean, this team, besides those blown leads, and besides the fact that we just are clutch, it seems like we could just get clutch. We could be a really good team, but we do not have the clutch gene.
Well, they're right there in the playoff picture. They're out of the playoff picture now, but they're right there. I mean, the Eastern Conference is an absolute bloodbath, and the Penguins are no exception to that. But the fact that they blew so many leads this last week in that 7-day span, and having 2 like historic collapses in back-to-back days on your home ice, and I was there for both of them. I sat there after the Sunday game. Everybody's leaving, and I sat there, and I was just like, what did I just watch? I'm almost not like, I didn't even have any emotions. I was just sitting there like, is this real life? Like, what just happened? I couldn't fathom what I just witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't feel like Pittsburgh sports in a nutshell, the past couple of years, I don't know what does.
Well, the Steelers have an opportunity to really change things up, or they have the opportunity to just join the party and, be in the same sentence as the Pirates and Penguins have been in the last couple of years. I don't think this week's going to be any different, but hey, maybe all the mojo that the Penguins had for the first part of the season, maybe it's starting to transfer to the Steelers a little bit,
Yeah, that would be very nice. I would love that. And then maybe the Steelers can give it back to the Penguins.
That would be sick. Well, as always, Zane and David here on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We want to thank you, as always, for listening. We'll be back a little bit of a short week, but you can expect us same time next week to break down this Lions game. And again, make sure you keep an eye out for our Outside Perspective episode with Ben Ackerman, my favorite Detroit sports fan in the entire existence of the world. As for me, I'm Zane, joined by David DeSantis. Thanks for listening to this episode of Boardman Black and Gold. We will see you next week.